Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Porter, and today we are diving into one of the most powerful and probably most overlooked tools in B2B SaaS marketing, and that is storytelling. In a world of features and checklists and enterprise jargon, great stories are really what cut through and create real connection. So joining me today is Jodi Innerfield, a marketing and storytelling consultant with deep experience in B2B SaaS. She spent time at Salesforce shaping product narratives that scale, and she brings both strategic insight and finesse to her work. Jodi holds an MBA from the University of Michigan and a bachelor's from Columbia University. Jodi, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Josh. Excited to be here.
You bet. Very, very happy to have this discussion today. So let's go on to the first question. So what does effective storytelling look like in B2B SaaS? And how does that really differ from B2C or other traditional industries?
So I'm going to start out with a controversial statement, which is that I don't think B2B storytelling is or should be that different than B2C.
Okay.
Yeah, right? I figured let's just get the controversy out of the way.
Yeah.
So think about it. Who is buying a B2B product?
A person.
A person, exactly. People are at the end of the day the ones buying. It's not robots or agents yet.
Yes.
And that means that B2B should look at storytelling pretty much the same way B2C stories handle storytelling. You've got to create emotional resonance, right? And we know that emotions, people are like help drive people's buying behavior. You want a story that creates tension. You want that standard rising arc and falling arc. You want a hero. You want something that they have to overcome. So really, B2B storytelling shouldn't be that different in structure, in emotional resonance than B2C storytelling. I think where people get tripped up is, wait a second, how do I tell a story about an app or about a service? Right? I think that's where people get really confused. And my answer is, well, what is the app doing? It's probably helping somebody overcome a problem.
Yeah.
Who's has the problem? It's your customer. Well,
Yeah.
what if that customer is your hero? Your customer is at the center of the story. They have this problem that they have to overcome. And here comes this tool, this support system, this cape that your hero can put on to help them fly. And all of a sudden, your hero can now overcome their obstacles and live happily ever after thanks to your product. That's really at its core what we're talking about. And I think if you look at some B2B storytelling, whether it's ads or keynotes, I think Apple Watch ads come to mind, or some of the way Google Gemini has been positioning and doing its commercials lately around helping end users. It's really not that different.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's, right out of the gate, a little.
Yeah. I love it.
For you.
I love let's make it as similar as possible. Yes. Well, and to your point, yes, that's really what it comes down to is, yes, we're ultimately still selling to a person, although yes, it's going to be a buying committee with the product, but it's still people involved and they're going to make the decisions.
Exactly.
And when you're telling a story, the key part of a story is the drama. What is the drama? Because a story without drama is going to be super boring. But what makes it compelling is you've got this hero, then there's some problem that they have to solve. And then they come in and solve it, hopefully.
Right. And so yeah, you've got the drama, you've got the problem they're trying to solve. You also have structure. Every story needs structure. It needs beginning, middle, and end. Yes. I don't care if it's a movie, if it's a bedtime story, right? Just because you're selling a B2B product, your first call deck, your keynote, your ad campaign, whatever it is, needs to have structure to give that beginning, middle, and end so people can orient themselves to where am I, what's helping me, what is the problem, and what does that promised end, promised land look like?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's the structure. It's like, yeah, sometimes you have to be reminded, okay, a story has a beginning, a middle, and end. Like that's really what it comes down to. that structure kind of helps you know how to tell it and
Mhm.
where that drama should come into and who's going in that journey. What's that hero's journey? So, and I love the piece you said about the cape too, because I'm huge into Marvel movies. So that resonates with me, and I know that a lot of people appreciate that. So awesome. Well, so this really kind of gets into the second primary question we'll talk about here. So a lot of product marketing revolves around positioning.
Mhm.
And storytelling can really play a huge part in that. How do you see storytelling shape and strengthen a product's positioning, especially when the product is so technical or
Yeah.
abstract?
So let's think about positioning is identifying who you're for
Yep.
and why you're different. And
Mm-hmm.
a story or storytelling can really just bring that to life. You probably are starting with a very structured positioning statement for
Yep.
X, who have Y,
Yes.
unlike Z, right? We all know that traditional
Yes.
structure. Okay,
Exactly.
well, that starts to have some of the framing for what you need. You know who you're talking to, who is your audience,
Mm-hmm.
you know what problem they're trying to solve,
Yes.
and you know what a little bit about the the differentiation. So how are you going to solve the problem differently than another hero? To continue the analogy, why a cape versus a magic potion to help you
Yes.
fly, right? Well, maybe you don't want to ingest a potion. I really could go far with this analogy. I love
Clearly.
I
Clearly.
love well, I love metaphors, which brings me to
Yes.
one way that I think storytelling will help positioning is metaphors is a really great way to bring particularly complex or technical products or concepts to life. If you think about things like fables and metaphors, analogies, even this cape analogy that I'm going to beat to death like a dead horse,
Yes.
which anyway, sorry, I really go
I,
down
li-
this
I,
rabbit hole.
I'm all about it. I'm all about it,
Um,
Joe.
it helps bring these things to life. It really just
Yes.
simplifies these ideas, and you'll see your audience start to have these aha moments of, oh, now I understand what that product does. So, for example, when I was at Salesforce, one of my early roles was on the platform team, and we were selling app dev,
Okay.
application development. It's selling to IT,
Yeah.
CIOs. It was a very technical purchase and very abstract. And the messaging and the story used to be you can build apps for anything.
Yeah.
And while that is true, you can use Salesforce to build apps for anything. What are apps? And
Yes.
no customer comes to you saying, I want to be able to build anything. If they're
Yeah.
spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a product, it's probably because they have a specific problem
Yes.
that they're trying to solve.
Yes.
So what we did was go back and refine the positioning. How do we streamline this to understand the customer's pains and focus more on a solutions message and a solutions positioning so we could have clear use cases? And then from a storytelling perspective, how do we make it more tangible for people what it means to build apps?
Mm-hmm.
So the analogy or the metaphor I came up with that I built into our first call deck that then we also used for our event when we would go and do events was suitcases didn't always have wheels. And I'm forgetting the guy's name, Bernard something, in the
Okay.
1970s, was on vacation with his family, I think the Bahamas, schlepping all of these heavy suitcases through the airport as they were trying to get to the terminal. And he's lugging these suitcases for his family of four, and he sees a trolley go by that's like trying to fill that has all the things for like snacks and whatever that you're
Right.
gonna in the concession stand that you're gonna get before you go on your plane, and someone's wheeling that through, and he's like, he's moving all of those boxes on something with wheels while I'm sitting
Right.
here with these essentially boxes, these
Yes.
suitcases that don't have
Yeah.
wheels. What if I just added some wheels to my suitcase? And the
Fascinating.
next slide was every business or department has some sort of manual, laborious process that they are doing that needs just a little innovation, just a little
Mm-hmm.
automation that already exists somewhere to take you from manual work to automation, to
Yes.
scale, to
Yes.
streamlining it. Every department has a suitcase that doesn't have wheels.
Yes.
Salesforce platform is the wheels that you can put on your suitcase. So you can, any manual process that you're doing today in email and spreadsheets, you can automate with a little bit of workflow automation
Yeah.
to make that much faster and make every department more productive.
I love that. I
There
love
you
that.
go. That's the
Yes.
story.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, kind of going back to the first part of your answer. Yes, apps and software, those all can be very ethereal and
Pretty
abstract.
abstract.
Like, okay, what does this even mean for me?
Mhm.
But then when you use analogies or fables or parables or whatever you want to call it, that definitely makes it more concrete. I think there's a term for that called apperception. Like,
Hmm.
take something from the real world and use that as an example for something that can be an abstract or hard to grasp concept. And so, yes, I love that. And to your point, you said this in your earlier comment about it's about customer pain points. And yes, we hear about that all the time with product marketing, but that honestly is really what it always comes back to is like, how are you helping them solve the problem? I like what you said. It's like, great, we can build all these apps. Okay, well, what does that even look like? Why do I need to build all these apps? But if you're able, and sometimes, a lot of times, people just lack imagination. So if you just throw something out there and say, I can build whatever you want, okay, well, that's too broad. I don't know what I want to build. But if you give them, these are the problems that we've
Mhm.
solved for other people, then
Correct.
it starts to click. Oh, yeah, okay, right. Yeah, I've had that problem before. So yes, I've had that drama, in the story. How do I get past the drama to succeed?
For
So
sure.
yes, I think the way you positioned your answer
There you
about
go.
this thing was great. So that's awesome. Well, thanks for that. That's a good way to kind of think about how we position how we position our products using storytelling for these abstract concepts. So, well, that really, again, kind of speaking customers leads into our next question about specifically customers. What's your process for turning customer stories or pain points into compelling marketing narratives that resonate with both the buyers and the users? And you've talked a little bit about that before, but I'd love to kind of hear some other examples about how you do that.
Hmm. I think, again, the thing about customer stories, or things that I love about customer stories, is at the center are the people. Who
Yeah,
are the people that are being impacted by this situation? So what problem are they trying to solve? And then how were the people impacted, not just the business? So
right.
again, if I go back to, app dev, if you're talking about a very manual expense reimbursement policy that everyone's tracking in Excel spreadsheets and emailing to their boss and then emailing to this, right, that creates a lot of headache for that poor person in finance who needs to go and do version control, and who someone's saying, where's my reimbursement? Well, I don't know where it is in the process. That's a lot of hours, that's a lot of stress. There's also compliance issues, there's probably security issues in there too,
Yes.
that puts a lot of stress on that person whose job it is to make sure people get reimbursed and get paid. That's, telling that story, not from, like, I think at the end of that story you can have the business metrics, right, of hundreds of hours saved and dollars saved from a business
Mhm. Yes.
perspective. But again, going back to the people buying a B2B product are people, having the user's emotional journey or their problem and how you're solving it at the center is way more compelling than having to look at this from the macro and saying the finance department's major issue. Because is that the finance department's major issue? No, there's probably something else along the line that's a bigger issue for them. But how the people were impacted, and when their life changed with this product, this support, this help, how does that then impact the business? So I don't know if that entirely answers your story on, like, what's my process. I think it's more about really making sure you hone in on the right pain point. And if the pain point isn't resonating, is there enough urgency? Like, if there's not enough urgency in this pain, is it the right pain point? So I think picking, you know, what part of that journey is the problem that you really want to
Yes.
hone in on and create that dramatic tension. If you're finding that it's not that compelling, well, then is that the right problem? There might be
Yes.
something else in that story that is a bigger problem that creates bigger urgency that you're trying to solve. And I think that's something that people often have a really hard time with, because product managers build a product from a user's point of view, and here's the user's flow and what they need to do, and they often are the ones where product marketers are first hearing about a product and its positioning and the jobs to be done. And so sometimes the reason or the purpose for that product to be built might actually be different than what's creating the urgency to buy it. So I think
Right.
it's the product marketer's job to really understand, yes, this is the product and how it works, but through customer testing and through customer interviews, why was it bought and what created the urgency to buy it? Because it can have a lot of benefits, but the benefit that it was built for might not be the benefit that drove the most urgency to actually purchase the product.
Yes. Yeah. And that's totally right on. And talking about what you said at the beginning, the person's pain points, not necessarily the business's pain points, although those are important.
They're
But
important and there's space for them.
yes, there's space for them. The business needs to be more efficient. The business needs to improve customer satisfaction, whatever it is. Yes, that is important. And we can see plenty of examples like that on many websites. But when we go back to it's a person buying it,
Yeah.
then yeah, you need to think about that impact as well. And so if the business is going to need to justify this purchase somehow. So yes, you need to be aware of and speak to those pieces. But when I think about that, there's benefits you can talk about, but then there's different types of benefits. There's the functional benefits. Those are the functional benefits.
Right.
But then when you talk about the emotional benefit,
Right.
that's when you're really talking about to the person that's actually making the
Yeah. Emotional benefit, but also how do you connect the dots between the individual person's problem and the organization's ROI? Because I'm
yeah,
not saying ignore organizational ROI and efficiency like at all, especially, if you're dealing with like a CIO or a CFO, they don't
yeah,
they want to see how this ladders up to my
absolutely,
organization's goals. I think
absolutely,
what I'm trying to articulate is that an organization's goals and reaching those goals still starts with making an impact on an individual's day to day, and how does that align to organizational success and drive. And so I think, how do you thread that needle, and how you use data and statistics and all of the other things that help bring this story to life for your buyer is
yes.
really important, and just is something that every PMM really needs to keep in mind, whether that customer story is a video or an ad or a web page. I think that's the other thing that is both challenging and exciting about customer
Yes,
stories, is they show up in so many different ways, targeting so many different people. Sometimes you have the ability to customize it based on where it's going or who's seeing it, but sometimes, like an ad campaign, you have to take a more macro view. So
totally,
it's the fun
totally.
part.
Yeah, because you do need to speak to the business outcomes. That is important, but then it's not only that. Those are the functional benefits. The emotional benefits for the person who's actually making
Mhm.
the purchase is also important to speak to, and that goes back to that journey, that hero's journey.
Yeah.
It's like, who's the hero? What's the drama? How do you overcome the drama? And I remember that's something that you really spoke about. You and I met a couple years ago at the
Yes.
Marketing Alliance at one of the summits here in New York, and that's exactly what you spoke about bringing that human element to it. And
Yeah.
I think that's key.
And you've got to find a way. You've got purse strings and you've got heartstrings, and you've got to tug at both of them. And it's about finding the right balance.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right, so this brings us to the next question about this topic, which is results. We talked about businesses. Businesses want results, right? They want their outcomes. We have to tell them about those outcomes. But when it comes to storytelling, it really can feel very qualitative. But in SaaS, everything really needs a KPI.
Mhm.
So, how do you evaluate the effectiveness of the storytelling in your campaigns? And what signals to you that a story is really landing well with the audience?
Yeah. I think what signals if a story is landing depends upon where am I telling this
Yeah.
story. I go back to, I've often been asked the question, well, like, other than a keynote, where does, or ad campaign, where does the story show up? And the answer is
Mhm. Yes.
absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's like a video, a campaign, a sales enablement, um, stories are an internal pitch that you're trying to do to convince someone to take on your project. Stories are everywhere. And so the KPIs or the results that you look for depend upon the channel. If I'm going to just keep, in marketing parlance, even though that channel
Yeah.
might be an internal meeting.
Right.
So I think, yes, qualitative feedback, but if let's say the story is in a keynote, session scores, audience reaction. With
Yeah.
keynotes, at least at Salesforce, I'm probably testing those. How are they testing? Does the focus group get it? I mean, and testing can be as simple as, I remember I presented at the small business keynote at Dreamforce last year, and I was running my section with a friend, and she
Sure.
didn't understand. I was like, she didn't love my intro. I was like, cool, thanks for the feedback. Let me go back
Yeah.
and do something. So like, it can be as simple as asking your friends to watch you give a pitch and see if they
Yes.
get it. If you're talking about a really complex product that you're trying to simplify, go pitch that product to your partner or to a friend who's not in your industry and see if they get it. So there's that kind of qualitative feedback. In terms of quantitative feedback, I think if you're doing something like videos or ad campaigns or websites, or if your story is online, click-through rates, time on page.
Right.
I think we often use customer stories for social, or some sort of
Yeah.
storytelling for social. How is it being shared? Is it being reshared? Are
Yes.
people commenting on it? I think engagement is better than reach in some ways, because with that reach, you don't know if you're reaching the right people. But if
Right.
you're getting engagement, I mean, that's just kind of like social media 101. Engagement and time on page, or time on like video in
Right.
YouTube. It's like how long you've been watching the video is much more impactful and will help drive and get your piece of content to the right people. So I think it's important to look at both qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative, click-through rate, shares might not tell you which part of the story is resonating. Whereas
Yeah.
if you have the
Yeah.
opportunity to present to a customer, you can literally see in their face what resonates with them. Where do they
Sure.
laugh? Where do they nod?
Yes.
So I think it just depends upon where you're telling the story, and making sure you are responding to that feedback, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, and constantly iterating and testing and shifting. Because again, going back to like what we said at the beginning, people are your buyers.
Yes.
People change, their needs change. A business buyer is going to change what they need, probably based on the macroeconomic environment. That macroeconomic environment changes rapidly. So you really
Yeah.
have to pay attention to the ebbs and flows of how your story is resonating, because what resonated last week might not resonate this week. And you
Yeah.
just have to be able to pivot and adjust really rapidly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think to break that down, that was interesting how you put that. There are the qualitative pieces that you can get super easy from colleagues, friends, people outside the industry. Just say, how does this pitch land to you? If it doesn't, great. That's feedback that I can use to make it better. And then when it comes to quantitative pieces, it there's no one right way to
No.
necessarily measure it. It's depending on the channel, as you said, it could be website, maybe clicks, or open rates for emails, or maybe deals that land, like, and there's maybe some complexity to that, but yeah, there's different ways you can quantitatively measure if that story is resonating. But you have to make sure that that story is interspersed throughout these channels, because otherwise, then it's hard to really track that. So I think you're right on with that. You got to be able to look at both, and see where it's performing. And I think your point about social engagement is really important. It's like, yeah, the reach isn't as important as engagement. Yeah, reach, I don't need it to talk to everybody. I don't need everybody to see it. I just
Mhm.
need the right people to see it
Exactly.
and engage with it. So I think that's a really key way to kind of think about that. Well, awesome, Jodi. Such great insights. Your storytelling approach, I think, is really a refreshing reminder that even in B2B, people still buy with their hearts and then justify it with logic. So Thanks for those tips.
Of
But
course.
before we wrap up, we always end with our rapid fire questions. So are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. So number one, what's your favorite marketing tool?
Canva.
Canva. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, definitely good.
Marketer's best friend.
Absolutely. Especially for those that are creatively not as adept as others. So that's great. All right. Second question. What's the most underrated skill in product marketing?
I mean, I'm going to say storytelling.
Okay.
I think
Absolutely.
that I think some people might say that's not underrated at all. It's perfectly rated. I think that when hiring, people look for things like industry experience, or I need someone who's taken a product from 0 to 1, or I need someone who's taken the product from 1 to 10. I think a smart person can figure those things out. I think, yes, you can learn how to be a storyteller, but there's something innate in that storytelling skill that I
Yes.
think people overlook in favor of other things that may show up more easily on a resume.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's easy to check those boxes because you'll see that on lots of job applications
Mhm.
and needs for having, positioning, messaging, industry experience, et cetera. But you rarely see that
Yeah.
storytelling. And so I think that's important. Awesome. All right. The next question is, what's the biggest mistake to avoid in product marketing?
Not seeing every opportunity as a storytelling opportunity.
Mm,
Again, every meeting you are in, every internal meeting, when you're trying to convince your boss's boss to take on a project, that's an opportunity for storytelling. You need to think
yeah.
about who is the audience, what do they care about, what convinces them, what's going to tug at their heartstrings and get them to listen and pay attention and then agree with me and what I'm trying to say. So I think too many people think storytelling just goes on a stage or
Yeah.
on an ad, and don't think about storytelling and how you can take the principles of storytelling and apply them everywhere.
I love that because yes, it's not about just the copy that goes on a website or something that happens in a pitch book, but before it even gets there, you should use that framework internally to get other people's buy-in on that. So I think that's great advice. All right, what's one thing you wish you knew before you started?
Before I started in product marketing,
Yes.
oh God, I think I did a lot of research before starting in product marketing. So I don't want to say I knew everything because I certainly didn't,
Sure.
but I was in business school and I was talking to a lot of alumni
Yeah.
who were in product marketing in a bunch of different companies. So I knew that product marketing meant something different at every company.
Yes.
I don't think I really appreciated what that meant, and that at some companies you might have product marketing so siloed so that you don't ever really work on other parts of product
Mm-hmm.
marketing.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so for me, I started my product marketing career at a startup where I was the second product marketer, which meant I had to do everything. And
Right.
then I moved to Salesforce, where the roles in product marketing are much more siloed.
Yes.
That worked for me. I appreciated getting that broad perspective first before getting deep expertise across
Mm-hmm.
different functions. There's no right way to do it. I know plenty of people who started getting deep expertise and then went more full funnel product marketing. I think, yeah, I didn't really fully appreciate how different product marketing is on every team at every company.
Yeah, yeah, it's such an interesting and dynamic role that it each company does have different definitions and it depends on the size of the company, and so you could be a generalist in one place but a specialist in
Yep.
another. And so yeah, you're right. It's being able to kind of understand the differences of that, and not everybody. Some people may be better fit for the specialist role
Yeah.
versus the generalist role, and that's
Totally
okay.
fine. Yeah. You
But
don't know until you try.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, okay, last question and the most important favorite podcast.
Oh, well, I should probably say my host's podcast, but I'm going to say
Absolutely.
my podcast,
Yes.
which is not a product marketing podcast, AP Taylor Swift. We do deep reading and literary analysis of Taylor Swift's lyrics.
Love it. Love it. No, you should
Me too.
absolutely promote your own podcast over mine.
Always be marketing. Always be
Yes,
marketing.
always be marketing. Absolutely. Yes. And yeah, it's that absolutely has nothing to do with product marketing, but what,
Hey, actually, it does. So actually, May and my two co-hosts, we are all product marketers,
okay.
and we use a lot of product marketing skills in order to launch the podcast. We had a
Oh, there
whole
you
launch plan. Oh yeah, we had a launch plan. We had our positioning statement. Unlike other Taylor Swift podcasts that focus on rumors and gossips or Easter eggs,
go. Love it.
AP Taylor Swift focuses on the literary value, the themes, literary devices, and that make Taylor Swift's music resonate with so many millions of people. So
I
yeah,
love
everything is an opportunity for storytelling and product marketing.
it. Is. It is. Well, you had to position your podcast, you had to market, you had the distribution channel, you had to tell stories about her. So absolutely. And I mean, who's not a fan of Tay Tay,
Of
honestly?
course.
So she's been my top artist on Spotify for at least 5 years.
Same.
So on rap. So definitely I endorse your
Thank
podcast.
you.
All right, Jodi. Well, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your storytelling wisdom. This has been one of those episodes I think people will definitely come back to.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me.
Well, and to our listeners, thanks again for tuning into Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. If you like this episode, please hit subscribe, leave a review, share it with your network. We'll be back soon with more product marketing insights to help you turn your features into impact and stories into strategy. Until next time, keep telling great stories and making your message matter.